I'm afraid that you have just been struck by my Nen ability known as Sabawaru. As such, this adorable mascot will now remain with you until you pay off your debt. And look, it's about to take effect. You know what to do. Hello and welcome to the New World Review, your source for everything anime and manga. And today I'd like to dip back into the world of Hunter x Hunter, as we often do, but specifically to examine the art of Nen, and even more specifically than that, to discuss Nen Beasts. And this is a fun discussion because Nen Beasts are currently a huge part of the story in the Succession War arc. However, this concept actually has quite a rich history in Hunter x Hunter, and Nen Beasts have appeared all over the place and have been used in some nice unique ways. Furthermore, they're also not quite as easy to identify and classify as you may initially think. So before we move on, let's discuss the commonly accepted definition of a Nen Beast. Essentially, a Nen Beast is an existence that refers to a seemingly living being brought into existence, usually through conjuration, but it can also be achieved through other means, and generally controlled via manipulation. From here, these beasts can also have abilities of their own, most of the time also being under the control of the user, but there have certainly been instances of Nen Beasts who operate as their own independent existence, and even have their own subclassification of Nen affinity. But for our initial example, let's look at the simple figure of Gorenu, who has the ability to bring two gorilla-like creatures into existence, which are named White Gorenu and Black Gorenu respectively. Now exactly what method of Nen Gorenu uses to bring these creatures into existence is currently unknown. I mean, I guess it could be basic conjuration, but there is a great argument to be made for emission as well, due to their exact abilities. Now Gorenu himself is a natural manipulator, which is the method by which he is able to command these simian friends, and he does so telepathically by the way, but the grander purpose these gorillas serve is allowing Gorenu to mess around with general placement. So for example, White Gorenu allows regular Gorenu to switch places at any time, thus essentially teleporting the two of them, while Black Gorenu does the same, but instead it allows Gorenu to pick another target of his choosing to teleport into the position of the second ape. So through very incredible use, it would allow Gorenu to have complete control over maneuverability on a battlefield, or very simply to allow Gorenu to always have a dedicated escape route. And that isn't to say that this is the only way that the Gorenus can be used as well, because they are also capable of physically interacting with the world around them, so you could theoretically use them for combative purposes, or even just to carry out general day-to-day tasks. Very importantly though, this particular case of Nen Beasts requires Gorenu to always be consciously controlling the gorillas, and if he loses focus, then these beasts will dissipate. And to look for a similar example, we can find that in Razor, who used his own Nen Beast to compete directly against Gorenu in the Greed Island Dodgeball match, which in his case allows him to create a series of anthropomorphic beasts labeled with the numbers 0 through 7, and given that this is known as the 14 Devils Hatsu, these beasts can also combine together to form larger numbers and thus become far more powerful. But just as with Gorenu, we aren't entirely sure how these beasts come into existence, but in Razor's case it's much more likely to be a result of emission, simply because he is a natural emitter, and as such conjuration would be Razor's weakest discipline of Nen, whereas Gorenu was a manipulator, and so conjuration is one step easier to access at a potent level. But in this case, Razor created his Nen Beast with a physical purpose in mind. I mean, in this case, to play dodgeball, I guess, but they would also serve as easy access to a nice miniature army in a battle type situation. Although it should be stated that with these beasts activated, Razor isn't capable of using anywhere near his full aura output, and the beasts themselves each have a small share of aura that becomes greater and greater as they fuse together. But it leaves Razor himself unable to operate at his maximum individual capacity. But not everyone uses Nen Beast for such a straightforward purpose, and in some rare cases the Nen Beast can act as more of a curse than they do a benefit. And to see an example of this, we now stick to Greed Island and turn to Abengane, who practices a very niche form of Nen known as Nen Exorcism. And this basically allows Abengane to remove Nen curses placed upon others. And an example of a Nen curse would be Kurapika's Judgment Chain, whereby he can enforce a rule on a person, and if they break that rule, then they are immediately killed. Simple, yeah? But Abengane is a unique existence who is able to remove those curses. However, he also happens to be a natural conjurer, which means the way in which he frees people from these afflictions is to conjure a Nen Beast who devours the curses, but that beast will then linger upon Abengane until the original criteria for dispelling the curse is met. And the beast in question becomes larger in direct correlation to the power of the curse it consumed, leaving Abengane with a curse of his own essentially in the form of a Nen Beast. So in Abengane's case, the beast is certainly not a desirable outcome, but it does show how they can be used for an incredible array of differing purposes. But Nen Beast can exist as a construct, not to really be used at all, and to take on an almost completely independent role in the world of Nen, and here I am talking specifically about the Guardian Spirit Beasts, who are currently being used in the Succession War. Now these guys do differ quite radically from what we've explored thus far, because while beasts are assigned to each quote-unquote user, they were not actually brought into existence by the princes of the Karkin Empire themselves, not even the rare ones who did know about Nen prior to the contest commencing. In fact, these beasts were actually conjured via a process involving what I'm assuming is post-mortem Nen, left behind designed by the previous Kakin monarchs, all of which seems to be concentrated in an object known as the seed urn, which was directly conjured by the very first Kakin king. And so after completing a simple ceremony in which a prince commits an offering of blood into the urn, they are then fed a Nen egg, which eventually develops into a full-on Nen beast, which, as with most established forms of Nen, takes inspiration from the desires and feelings of their specific user. However, due to the fact that they weren't specifically conjured by those whom they are bound to during the succession contest, the princes cannot actually control their beasts, or at the very least they can't yet. Furthermore, the princes can't even see any of the beasts that have been conjured as part of the war, even once they have learnt about Nen, although the beasts are visible to any other Nen user, indicating that this vision issue is probably one of the many restrictions put in place to make this incredible power possible, because the beasts that have come into existence here are unlike anything we've seen before. These aren't the basic mindless drones that we saw with Gorenu or Reza, and in fact many of the beasts come equipped with Nen abilities of their own and are even granted a natural affinity in one of the 6 Nen categories, thus effectively making these Nen beasts Nen users themselves, which is a bit of a weird thing to think about. In addition to this though, at least 2 princes involved in the succession war have their own personal Nen beasts, one of which is 4th Prince Saradnik, who is such a naturally gifted user that he just up and summoned a 2nd Nen beast entirely subconsciously. Now Saradnik is a specialist, so it's not immediately apparent as to the route that he may have taken to create this beast, although conjuration would be a natural thought because it's right next to specialization on the Nen ring. And we're also not entirely sure what it does right now, but it may be connected to Saradnik's parallel future Hatsu, even though he needs to be in a state of Zetsu to use it, which in theory would dispel the beast, but that's a whole different story. I think I've gone into it before, so we won't do it here. But we should also touch on Camilla, who has access to a terrifying Nen beast in the form of a giant kitty cat, and one of the more interesting conditions for use that we've seen in the series being that Camilla has to be killed for this Hatsu to activate, after which the cat spawns into existence, possibly through the wonders again of post-mortem Nen, and drains the life of whoever killed Camilla and reinserts it into her, thus reviving Camilla from death and killing her would-be murderer. But we do need to get a bit weirder from here because, as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, Nen beasts do reach a point where they become very difficult to define. Now all of the examples I've listed are pretty schmick and easy because they all involve a source of conjuration or emission to craft a beast, but if we expand the definition to transmutation, then we have some grey area scenarios. One such example would be Moral, who was able to transmute his aura directly into smoke via the use of his oversized pipe, and then use a further combination of emission and manipulation to craft and control the smoky constructs, of which he is even capable of giving a naturalistic appearance. So emission is still involved, but the main vehicle here is actually transmutation, and I'm not entirely sure where we draw the line here in regards to considering Moral's smoky creations as Nen beasts. Another tricky designation would be the example of Xeno Zoldyck, who has the ability to transmute his aura into the shape of a dragon, which he continues to maintain control of without the need for manipulation to come into it. And this is clearly pure aura we're talking about, and it does involve some sort of emission as well, because Xeno can send it far away from his body, but would we call the dragon head Hatsu a Nen beast? Look, I'm not so sure. And there are other examples as well, like Knuckles Hakawara Hatsu, because I can only assume that APR and IRS would be considered a technical form of Nen beast, both of which were brought into existence through emission and manipulation. So they do fit the bill, they just both serve a very unique purpose, one of which is to measure debt, and the other is there to enforce a state of Zetsu. And when you think about it, there really are a ton of other characters who make technical use of a Nen beast, like Bisky, who can transmute and manipulate Cookie into existence and give wonderful massages. So she has a human form, but Cookie is surely a Nen beast here, and if that's our accepted definition, then it is hard to deny Moral Smoke Troops and Xeno's dragon into having that classification as well. But Nen beasts have been a core aspect of Hunter x Hunter, and there is a ton that I haven't even touched on in this video, but they're a cool feature that are even integrated into abilities that we wouldn't immediately think they'd be part of. It's easy to consider them as summoned beings to do your bidding, whether that be combat, dodgeball, or massages, but they can be implemented into a variety of complex ways, each with their own strange benefits and restrictions. And just like the world of Nen in general, the subclassification of Nen beasts holds an infinite amount of potential, and I very much look forward to seeing more of them when the series progresses. But that pretty much does it for this discussion on Nen beasts. If you enjoyed this video and the content this channel produces in general, then please do consider donating to the New World Review Patreon, because the support of all of you amazing people is what continues to make this channel possible. And if Patreon isn't quite your style, then please do leave this video a like, share, or subscribe, because it also helps support this channel an incredible amount. And if you'd like to join the fun at any time, then please do head over to my Discord server, where a wide array of shenaniganry takes place on a daily basis. And finally, please do comment with your thoughts on Nen beasts. This has been the New World Review, and I'll see you next time. Is Neferpitou the strongest among the 3 royal guards? That depends, I guess, on what you mean by strongest. If you were just talking about, traditional raw power, then I'd say that Yuppie at the very least outclasses Pitou, but the reason why I would always consider Pitou to be above Yuppie is simply because Pitou is a specialist. Being a specialist with that insane aura capacity gives Pitou almost limitless potential. Like, they were able to come up with at least 3 incredibly ridiculous abilities, and if Pitou needed more for other specific purposes, then I have no doubt that their natural talent would have catered for that. Whereas Yuppie and Shiapoof, they were also insane, don't get me wrong, but their natural affinities of enhancement and manipulation respectively do heavily restrict their ultimate abilities, which isn't a problem at all facing off against human opponents, but if you were to compare the Royal Guard simply against each other, Pitou just has such a massive advantage by being a member of the specialist class.